Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a blueprint for one of the most difficult parts of the justice system, high-conflict family court. We're going to explore a new approach that's designed to stop that painful cycle of confusion and get everyone focused on the one thing that truly matters: stability for the kids.
So let's start with a question that really gets to the heart of the matter. For so many parents and children, the court process itself becomes this source of endless trauma, a loop of hearings and motions with no clear end in sight. But what if the real problem isn't just the family conflict, but the system itself?
And this quote, well, it offers a really powerful clue. What it's suggesting is that the root of the problem isn't always the family's drama, but the system's own chaotic process. So the solution, then, isn't necessarily more fighting in court, but something way more fundamental: a steady, predictable framework. So let's talk about this spin cycle. That's the chaos that happens when families have no idea what to expect. So when they turn to the court for help, what is it they really need to break free from that cycle?
Well, and the answer is surprisingly simple, and it's not about winning, it's all about predictability. Families need a process that is consistent, one that doesn't just change from day to day based on who's on the bench. They need clear expectations about what's required, a feeling of safety in the courthouse, and a clear path forward that isn't going to just vanish tomorrow.
Okay, so if you could actually design a system specifically to provide that kind of stability, what would it look like? That's the whole idea behind a model designed to turn that court chaos into predictable clarity. It's called CoTrackPro, and I want you to think of it less like a piece of software and more like a shared operating manual for everyone involved. It's a closed-loop system, which is just a way of saying that every single task has a clear beginning, middle, and end, making sure that problems don't just fall through the cracks. It's all about managing conflict using repeatable pathways and documented results.
Now, the foundation of this entire system is brilliantly simple. It's all about getting everyone, from the judges and clerks to the lawyers and the parents themselves, to use the same 5 words to describe every step of the process. These 5 words replace all that confusing legal jargon with a language that's simple and, most importantly, predictable. A trigger is just any event that starts a process. The workstream is the predefined path to manage it. An artifact is the documented proof the work was done. Could be as simple as a checklist. A handoff clarifies exactly who is doing what next, and a role defines that person's specific responsibility. It's a simple, clear, and universal vocabulary for action.
So how does this blueprint actually work in practice? Well, this is where that shared language starts to build clear pathways out of conflict, turning these vague, messy problems into measurable plans.
And this just illustrates the core shift perfectly. The system moves conversations away from those subjective, emotional arguments like, "he's not following the rules," to an objective, measurable plan. The question is no longer about blame, it's about clarity. It becomes, okay, who does what, by when, and how are we going to verify it? That's a total game changer.
So here's what that looks like in action. The trigger? A vague court order that's causing the same fights over and over again. The old way would just mean another hearing. But the new way? The court initiates the order clarity workstream. The artifact that comes out of that is a simple sheet defining every detail, and the outcome is huge. Ambiguity is gone, compliance goes way up, and families finally stop coming back to court for the same problem.
And this points to a crucial rule of the system: no undocumented handoffs. Every single action, every referral, every time responsibility is transferred from one person to another, it's recorded. This is how you prevent things, and more importantly, people, from falling through the cracks. And all of this is made possible by what's called an artifact toolkit of standardized documents. There are templates for pretty much everything, from creating clarity around a court order to preparing for a hearing or tracking compliance. By using the same formats, everyone is operating from a single source of truth. No more he said, she said. Now, this kind of stability inside the courtroom doesn't just stay there. When the court functions in a predictable way, it creates this positive ripple effect throughout the entire community that's trying to support the family. So you can think of the court as offering 4 key gifts to the wider community. First, you get procedural integrity and clarity, which are huge for building trust. Third is containment, which stops that family conflict from spilling over into schools and doctors' offices. And finally, you get continuity, a reliable next step that prevents that constant state of crisis that strains the entire system. And this chart just shows you how widespread that impact really is. When the court is stable, families stabilize.
And that means fewer crisis calls to schools, less ambiguity for police officers, and much clearer standards for the professionals who are supporting these families. The court's stability literally reduces the burden on everyone else.
So after looking at all these pieces, what is the single most important idea we should take away from this entire model? What is that core principle that really makes it work?
It all comes down to this simple truth. When courts run predictably, families can rebuild predictably. For a kid who is caught in the chaos of a high-conflict separation, a predictable process isn't just a nice idea, it is a form of safety. It's a lifeline.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to mull over. This whole approach suggests that building a more humane, more effective justice system isn't necessarily about more emotion or even just more resources. Maybe it's about providing the clear, reliable, and steady structure that actually allows families the space they need to heal. What if predictability is the most compassionate design of all?